Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another podcast episode of Connecting the Dots in Fintech and Payments. I'm here today with Igor Tomych, the founder of DashDevs, one of the companies I've discovered actually over the past few years now. Extremely interested in learning more about what they have done, and so we'll touch on that. Today's discussion is going to be a little bit broader than the usual, right? So we're going to be touching obviously on who Igor is, on DashDev as a company, what they've done, what they're doing, but also very much so the architecture of today's journey, right? The velocity secrets, which is something else that we have an expert here. Fintech core, ownership models as well as the Fintech garden. And all of those concepts, again, those are the names of them, but we'll dive into them in a second. Maybe let's start with what I enjoy the most, is giving the mic to our speaker here. Igor, do you want to start with a quick round of introductions?
Sure. Thank you, Arthur, for inviting me. And it's a pleasure to be here and have an ability to tell my story and what we have been doing for years. So my name is Igor Tomych. I'm CEO of DashDevs. And I really appreciate where I am right now, because for me, it was really a long road, starting in a tech as an engineer and then converting into the manager position and then doing the business, because this educated me a lot, that gave me an exposure from different business processes. Because usually if you start with the hard skill, then you see what is really happening on the beneath of the specific business process. You're not just understanding how to manage people, you do something which is the hard skill for this job. And that journey taught me a lot. And all those results kind of concentrated in the products and the projects that we are doing right now.
So continuing on the introduction, what is DashDevs, right? And you've helped shape and build over 100 different fintechs. So very, very curious on how you've been doing that, and obviously what was the motivation behind it too?
DashDevs is a crossroad. That's basically the company which is combining several things. One, definitely in 2011, we started as usual outsourcing company for the mobile engineering. But then in 5 years, we found ourselves helping various fintechs, and we started with the United Kingdom. We were helping down an LLP, which is used to be like crowdfunded platform without even crowdfunding name, because it used to do this from 80s by issuing the bonds. And we understood that in financial industry, there is a big hunger for good technology. And sometimes financial industry doesn't have the guts, the skills, and the speed to apply those technologies in a proper way. And we came, and since we were working as outsourced, we came from this world. We were helping startups across the world. We've been delivering applications for mobile application. We've been delivering mobile applications, which are first-class citizenship if we're talking about the fintech process, because you need to trust, you need to feel something which is a really good digital product as mobile application. And in this case, DashDevs, we have the services, we're helping our clients in outstaff mode, but as a concentration of our experience, we have one product which is called Fintech Core, which is allowing to build almost with no time specific business models in the fintechs.
That's going to be really interesting to touch on, just because you've mentioned 2 or 3 things here. One of the first things is you've helped financial institutions.
Yeah.
Right. And then you mentioned that you've also worked with startups.
Yeah.
So I'm curious onto why you would choose kind of the hardest path, right? Because for startups, I'm guessing doing something a little bit more general to get started, and then doing something a little bit more tailored depending on what they want to do, the business models they're trying to build. I think that's an easy path, right? And scale. When you look at specifically financial institutions, they're complicated, right? Everything in the fintech space is very complex. So from a choice perspective, why go down that path? Why help them?
That's a really good question. And in my head, I see the quote from Steve Jobs, you can understand why you've been doing those things only going back, taking a look on back. And I think there are several reasons. One of the first, I actually had an experience with the first computer when I was 13. I was 13. It was the home PC that my parents bought, and it was 98. There is no internet connection, there is no networks, there is no Wi-Fi, nothing. So basically, you have the PC which you can fire up and then use some CD-ROMs or diskettes to put some games. And I was always curious and learning the things. And I understood that I really would like to understand how this thing is working. And that pushed me into the university. I was going, even before going into applying for university, I was going to the computer science courses in Kharkiv National University of Radio Electronics. And going back there in 98, it wasn't the really trendy stuff, like no engineers, no front end, no big salaries. It's some geeky stuff that some guys discussing in laboratories of the universities. And that's kind of shaped up because I always was learning the things and trying to understand how they work and how you can split into the small bits, and then out of those small bits and pieces build something that you want.
Yeah.
And that gave really good exposure. So when I applied for university, I already knew that I would go to the computer security, and that's another element. So you have an understanding how the computer science is working, and then you have really good understanding how the security is working. The math engine, the compliance, the procedures, the regulation part, and that's kind of shaped me. And I think through my history, even before jumping into the fintechs, I was shaped to work with the financial institutions, because one of the area of my master degree is to, it's been in 2007, it was going to the local Ukrainian banks and working as administrator or like managing the networks. Everyone was making fun, like, you need to go and work in a bank? There is no sense. And that's why I chose the path to go into the outsourcing. So basically you're competing against the world labor market. You are kind of competing, and that pushes you to educate new languages like .NET, I don't know, modern infrastructure, modern front end. And then when I built the first bank for United Kingdom, then it rang the bell. Like when I was finishing university, I didn't want to go to the bank. But then I found out myself building the bank myself. And it's kind of, I made the 360 turnaround. I went back from the point which I started by finishing university. So I never wanted to be in banking, but then I found enjoying it and doing it for real.
And it's fascinating because in many things that you said, I recognize some of the choices that I've made. But as you said, you only make sense of those choices going backwards, right? It's already gone. You can now start explain it, but it only happens then. It sounds like you found the problem, which financial institutions and financial products, just in general, the infrastructure behind it is extremely complex. And so having a company like DashDevs, for example, that can come in and help you build that stack, right? I'm seeing a massive shift, and maybe we touch on that a little bit later, but we have more technology today that give companies the ability to ultimately become financial institutions. I think about the blockchain, for example, right? Like digital wallets, I think, are an incredible and extremely secure, because the blockchain is behind as a technology, but incredible kind of product that you can use to kind of start creating accounts and then moving money in between, again, two different places. So I'm sure there's a lot that's going to be, we're going to touch on that as well. But before diving into, what's new, as you said, it's an old industry and there's a lot of things. You touched on it a little bit, but, you were the CTO of Teraboot Gateways, PSP, right? You were the CTO of Twisto. You have a very focused information security background. How would you say that has shaped how you've built, the products and so the company of DashDevs, right? Because a lot of times we see builders like this, and especially in startups, in your case, now it's really like a scale up. It's much bigger, but it's a break things first kind of mentality. And I feel like for you, it was probably a little different because of the background that you've had and the fact that you've experienced it, and you knew the environment before you started building the tech. So really curious, how does your background ultimately make you build this type of infrastructure differently?
I value the things which are beyond the current marketing trends, because what information security educates you, that actually security is kind of vice versa from usability. So the most secure computer has zero usability. So it's not connected to internet. It doesn't have the keyboard. It doesn't have the mouse. You cannot plug and play anything. It's absolutely secure because you cannot do anything with that. And the computer science and information security educates you that you need to be balanced with the ability to serve the customers, but also have a specific level of protection. Because people in academics, they understand that everything is hackable, because even the brute force, like when we think about hacking, it's going all through all the variations of the password, which is technically possible even if you have the dumb machine. Like it just goes and like you do with the locker with your luggage, you forgot the number, and then you do the brute forcing, and that indicates that you need to be real. You need to serve the risk, but another way to build something which is working as a business. And that's what I took into my positions into Teraboot, because you have to build the platform that works. And that's how we got in as a DashDevs. We helped to develop the proof, and we delivered the first version for National Bank of Bahrain as an account aggregation and embedded into the other bank system. And that's what we've been doing with the Twister, the change management of the team to make sure that it's capable to execute and deliver the products. So I think that kind of gives you an appreciation of the values which are living more than decades. Because the best software or the best approach in engineering is the code that you never wrote. Because it's the code that should not be written. And
This is so true.
Right now we're living in the era where we think that we can create a lot of code, but we don't need to create code. Code is just the tool for achieving the business goals. And sometimes engineers and product managers, they need to think harder about the product and business models to produce less code to make sure that it's functioning. And that once again overlaps with the security, because if you create entropy, you create a lot of different functionality, then you're more unsecure because you cannot control the outcomes of the infrastructure, of the business functionality, how customers interact. So it kind of goes hand in hand with understanding with math, security, the product, the business models.
Yeah. If you ever do a hackathon, I will not be there. I will not be on that level, but noted. I think something else that, I'm thinking out loud right now, but I had never seen anyone mention a 9 months sprint.
Yeah.
Right. But I guess it makes sense. And I would love for you to explain a little bit what is that concept, and obviously, building the right infrastructure in 9 months, you must have been something pretty damn incredible. So explain us a little bit more. What is the 9 months sprint?
So I think it's kind of more internal joke, because we delivered the digital bank in the United Kingdom in 9 months completely from the scratch. And it's not about the sprint. I think in this case, in 2018, when we've done this with the dozens, it was really interesting case for us, because we found ourselves helping the company Project Imagine, and they were holder of the license, the brand, but they needed the tech partner who will take accountability for the whole infrastructure. And we started with evaluating competitors and white label platforms, and then we find out that there is no a good choice, because they needed MEI, which is electronic money machine, with the MiFID II. And by that time, it just barely the start of the banking as a service infrastructure. So you can, at max, you can do the checking account with the cards. That's it. So nothing more specific. And then the CEO, Aritra, said, Igor, what are the options? And I said, actually, you can build it from the scratch. And he said, go do it. And I think at that time, if you would estimate the complexity of creating the digital bank with a full onboarding as a KYC, with account opening, with the card issuing, AML, real-time investment into the bonds and the ETFs, it will take you 2.5 years. And we've done it completely from the scratch in 9 months. And we even started with the polling, the vendors. We had a call to Clearbank. Literally, the first months when we were collecting the vendors and ironing out the components, we were considering modular finance and Clearbank, and we gave them a call. It was, June. We're sitting in an office in London, in WeWork. We're calling them, we're explaining the business model, we're explaining that we need to develop and connect with the account issuing or creating an account on their side. And they said, you're too small. You are not interested for us. We don't work with you. And then in 3 months, they call in back and saying, hey guys, would you like to migrate from modular finance? Because we launched. And I think in this case, 9 months joke is about an ability to organize the work the way that you are not doing the process, but you are delivering the results and constantly delivering the results. In 2019, Dozens was nominated for, I don't recall the name of the magazine, but we were called the most updated banking application in a year. So out of 56 weeks, we've done around 30 updates to the application, constantly adding functionality. It was the most updated application compared to Revolut, Monzo. Unfortunately, the project didn't survive the competition, various reasons, but not the tech one. So I think that's kind of the internal understanding that sometimes you can push a lot and focus on the results rather than the process.
What would you say? And I guess this is just me curious, right? Like you built a banking platform that people can reuse and build a bank around.
Yeah.
So what was kind of the one thing at first when you started, you were like, this is probably impossible. Like what was like the biggest challenge, I guess, that you had to build?
As I'm always saying to my team, you're selling 3 times. You're selling to the client, then you're selling for the team, to the team, and then you're selling for the people who will join your team later. So I think the second step after we made a contract for like delivering the bank, it was selling and making sure that internal team can do it and motivated to do it.
Okay.
Because when we started, the team came and said, Igor, we cannot hire engineers with the rate that we need. And I said, guys, we're sitting on the best talent pool in Ukraine with a lot of really good engineers available, really smart, who has an experience in banking infrastructure, and we can do it. And then instead of starting like building from the scratch the bank, we started building the hiring process. So we managed to onboard up to 15 people per month, like with our
15 people per month.
Yeah. For a certain period of time, we were growing really fast. At some stage, the bank or the project that we were doing was up to 75 people. But it's all together, like a designers, business analysts. And one of the point for 9 months, like a sprint, is about having really small teams. Because instead of having 10 engineers doing the backend, we had really small team for infrastructures. We had the really small team which will really see what they do and what are the struggles, how to make sure that they do properly approaching and delivering the results.
We're talking about building technology.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about building technology, the first thing that you brought back is people.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't talk to me about the impossible challenges of building the actual tech. You talked to me about the impossible challenge of finding the right people to build the tech. And I personally, I love this. Like, this is one of the things that I preach about like all the damn time, which is people tend to forget that the word company literally means like a group of people.
Yeah.
Right. And so when I think about businesses, and I have the same issue right now, which is as any business scales, like I advise a few and things such as, you start seeing that the biggest and hardest part of it all is hiring. It's bringing the right people. As you said, I love the third point you meant, is like you're building for the people that you will hire as well.
Yes.
And I never thought about this way. So I really, really like that one. So yeah, the impossible challenge, if I have to recap, yeah, it's hiring, which I really like. Let's switch gears a little bit and dive into the era of mobile potential.
Yeah.
Right? Like Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Most likely an inspiration.
I quite passionate about that, because being an engineer in Ukraine, you're kind of growing in the specific environment. Like I had an access to internet in 98. So basically you can go to internet, you can see what is going on, but still you are in a local context, in a local doing business and a local way of communicating. And the first experience going to United States into Silicon Valley was 2010. And that's the moment when the mobile engineering were ramping up. And if I'm not mistaken, I got my first iPhone in Ukraine in 2008. And that's once again, the points which are bringing you into the point where you are right now, but only going backward, you can understand how it's influenced. So I always was a geek. And when iPhone came in, before buying iPhone, I was thinking like, I need the communicator, because you have the cell phones with the buttons, like you can call, but nothing more for a geek, computer geek. And then I was choosing between E10 Fish, like some communicators with a small screen, with a pencil, like for typing, and still with a keyboard. And then when iPhone came, you understood it's full Unix system. So it's not about the marketing that Jobs is doing, but it's a first mobile device which is running on Unix. Like it's not Linux, but still compatible. And then in a couple of months after the release, the phone was jailbreaked, and then you had an ability to install applications before an official one. And actually, it combined everything. So I got my iPhone in 2008. We've hacked for running with the local Ukrainian operator. We definitely jailbreak to install applications. And then you started to kind of go into the Cydia or installers installing different applications built by engineers who were never approved by Apple. They never had any guiding how to write the software, because whatever they did, they digged into the system, they reverted like how the Apple is doing their own native applications, kind of built something out of that. And one interesting story about the piano, because in installer, one of the first application was like the multi-touch piano.
Okay.
The idea is pretty simple. You have the full screen, you have the keys, and you can play it as a real piano, but you can play it in multi-touch, because if you take any technology previously that, it didn't work with multi-touch. Like right now, everyone is expecting from the device to handle multiple touches and like all the zooms in and zooms out. It never existed before. And iPhone introduced this heavily. And I was working in 2010, 2008, 9, I was working with a Netherlands company. And I was showing to the guys, and they said, like, who needs it? Like, what does it make? Like, piano on the phone? There is no sense. And that's kind of showed me that there is a big gap of understanding what technology can give you. Because we never had devices which so good with the potential as operating system for scalability. Because before that, I don't know your experience, but there wasn't any mobile devices, but whatever you were looking as a web browser, it was just simulating the browser. It never been the desktop-like experience, and iPhone brought it because it was Unix, which allowed to port the Safari or WebKit. I can go into the technical details, but no one needs that. And the second one, it gave really unique way to build the interface. And we're literally sitting on the device, which can potentially change the world. And 90% of the people don't see that. And that's the moment that I understood that I would like to spend my time to educate myself how to build the best applications and platforms using the mobile experience, which we see right now in the banks. Because you're no longer... I'm still amazed if you go to Revolut and you try to log in on the web, you can see transactions and statements. You cannot even send the transfer to someone because there is no transfers inside of the web application. Everything is bundled into the mobile engineering, into the mobile experience. And I think having this understanding in 2009, when I was talking with my Netherlands managers in outsourcing, that changed a lot. I went to United States. I visited several meetups in Silicon Valley, at Apple, Google, promoting mobile engineers. I saw how differently the connection is made in communities, because that's something that never existed in Kharkiv and in Ukraine. There was no local communities for engineers. And I came back and I started Kharkiv Mobile Engineers, Kharkiv Mobile Development. When each month we were doing some technical guiding each other, how to build the things, how they're different, which really ramped up the technical skills, what we were able to deliver. So it comes in a hand. You are not investing into the technology, you are investing into the community, which is given an ability to advance the technology. So that's something that I learned from piano, from visiting the United States and seeing how the community is built differently in Silicon Valley.
So I spent 6 years in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I just moved to New York recently, and what they say about San Francisco is it's the place you go to build.
Yeah.
There's just not, I mean, it's a beautiful city, don't get me wrong. I'm going to get hated on right now by anyone that lives there, but it's a beautiful city. The weather can be both great and sometimes a little annoying, but in California, life is great. It's not New York.
Yeah, it's different.
It's a place you go to and you have, I call like the payments community that I have around, I call them like payment nerds. And I feel like everyone is a nerd, but I love it. One of the things I admire in people most of the time is when you see someone and they're super passionate about something.
Yeah.
And to me, for anyone that's close to me, like I need to admire that person if I don't admire them. In San Francisco, you can find so many people that you can admire because, as you said, the way you think. I started jumping in autonomous vehicles like a year and a half ago, something, right? And you talk about this in Europe, people think you're crazy, but it's just how it is. And so I think you actually going there and seeing everything, and even today we're talking about neobanks. Like neobanks is a disruption of the banking systems by enabling, consumers to have access to a more modern stack, as well as a more modern experience and more access to like a community that's different. I guess younger people that wanted more technology focused, I guess, applications to be there. But all of those changes, the UX at the end is so critical. And I think unless you've been in San Francisco, and I'm talking about the West, right?
Yeah.
Because in the East, I think there's also things that are incredible. But I think unless you've been in San Francisco, you cannot really understand how much in the future you can live and the things that you see and how different and the technology is there and how the technology can then be applied to so many different things.
I would say it's not even about how the technology is applied, it's how technology is inspired. Because European Union and maybe some part of the East Coast, it utilizes the technology. Like we have the technology, it's good, we don't have it, no one cares.
Yeah.
But with the San Francisco, you kind of have a feeling that you can come up with something much more powerful that you have today. And that's maybe with the first days, like bringing the best brains into one location, building air defense and stuff like that. But that's still in the air. Like you literally come and you feel that actually you can do better.
For me, one of the things that I've seen is you have the most brilliant people in one place, and you just can ideate. You can fail. And that culture of being able to fail is so fine. Like when I see on someone's LinkedIn, I'm a serial entrepreneur. In my head, I think, okay, so you failed so many times that, but you love it. And I love like people that can fail, understand this. I think they're fun to be around. And that's where, the craziest ideas are built, but also how the future is being defined. Because I think there's two types of CEOs, right? And then we'll dive into something else that I'm very curious about. But there's the type of CEOs that follows merchant demand. Mm-hmm. It's something you need to do. It's important. But you follow merchant demand. And then you have a second type of CEO, which is more, I'm a visionary. I think this trend will happen, or we will create this trend, and this product is required because it's going to change everything. And so this is what we will do. And so you have to create a category, you have to create a new product, I find that fascinating. That's more, probably less of those are successful at the end, but the ones that are, they're really successful. Whereas the ones that follow merchant trends and can execute, I call them more operational leaders. And I think you need both. In San Francisco, when I see serial entrepreneurs, I'm like, okay, so you're probably a visionary kind. And you're just like, because otherwise you don't write serial entrepreneur ever. So that makes me laugh. But from the experience that you've had, right? Like you went from an operator and then you obviously entrepreneurial because you started DashDevs, right? Like how did your entire experience kind of, bring you into payments? And then I'd love to start talking as well about, Fintech core and modular intelligence, and that word modular, which is, everyone says modular at this point, but maybe let's take a step back. How did everything that you've built bring you to the world of payments, right?
And to start with, we had experience building the projects and delivering the products for our clients. And we understood that in fintechs, in one way you have similar processes, but then in another way you have a lot of different implementations. Like we've seen the implementations, you're coming after the project from another vendor or from internal team, and you open up what they're doing, and you would never imagine that the code and the approach can be structured the way that you find it. And I think Fintech Core is our more than decade experience to get the business process and digital product in proper terms and proper framework as a technology. Because technology gives you an ability to do the same thing in a million ways. and you can do, it's like the video Rolex or GIFs, like with the sound control, which you can do so many waves which are not usable. And with the technology, it's kind of the same approach. You need to understand in deep roots how the technology is working to be properly translating the business into the specific modules. I think right now the module is kind of overused, but from the technology perspective, engineers are creating small independent pieces which are not interdependent. It means that today you would like to do the things A, and then you can combine with the things B and C without even merging them together. Because if you have, and that's example with even right now, the context is so fast. Like you open accounts for your customers, and then you open in USD. Like that's usual fiat accounts. And then your team, the marketing team, the sales team will want to open the blockchain accounts, and then your system is not working with that. So to achieve the level that you're able to serve the business needs, to build the code the way and the technology infrastructure, that it's not dependent on the current marketing approaches or whatever the trends is. If you open an account, it's still an account. It doesn't matter, is it fiat or the blockchain? And that's what we took as our deep-rooted engineer skills to properly decouple and structure the code the way that it's not dependent on the stuff that is trendy right now. So it can be applied for the future projects. It can be applied for old technology. We can integrate whatever it's needed, and the complexity for that is reduced because we did tremendous work generalizing and making the components that are working in most of the cases. Because it's quite easy for engineer to implement that. It's like the best way for engineers to do the strike is Italian strike. Do exactly what is asked. Like you want a button, you will get a button, but then you will have to spend, I don't know, half a year refactoring because it doesn't work the way, or you cannot change anything about that. So that's I think what we took as an idea for the Fintech core. And another level, we had really great exposure globally because we worked with the United States. We working with the United Kingdom. We're working quite a lot with the MENA region. Right now, we're helping to Kingdom Saudi Arabia digital banks. We worked with the Rock Bank. We worked with NatWest. So having an exposure for different projects around the world give you really good understanding, not how your team is seeing that, not how the customer is seeing that, but you have much larger horizon, which is giving you more precise picture of what is actually happening. Because you will be amazed how many companies they saying that they have state-of-the-art tech, which means outdated 15 years ago .NET libraries, which no one can support, and then they looking to have DevOps engineers to scale up in no time. Guys, you're starting with the wrong foot. It's not about scaling the technology, but making sure that you have a proper business process, because it's not defined. It's not functioning as a tech because you don't have the proper business process. You don't have proper playbooks, et cetera, et cetera. That's why technology is lacking.
There's a lot to unpack, but one of the things that you're saying that I adore personally is there's always in every company that desire to go in the make versus buy.
Yeah.
And the main issue is at some point in time, each stack and technology is evolving extremely quickly, right? Yeah. So you have a base layer, and on top of that base layer, you want to have a new product. So you build, a product for that specific stack with that base layer, and then you want to build another product, but it's only going to work within their own environment.
Yeah.
And right now the barriers in basically being able to use that and combine it, as you said, merge it almost, and so you create something a lot more seamless with another stack. They don't speak the same language. Like one is speaking Russian and the other one is speaking Spanish. It just doesn't. You can't merge them.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you have to always create ways for the APIs, basically for both platforms to communicate. But again, it's not seamless. It's two different processes. They won't really, even if they can communicate, they won't really work well together. So what I'm hearing is you're creating basically a stack that is extremely easy, speaks basically the language of everyone, and enables, other players to come in, almost like an open source, other players to come in and just be able to build on top and really merge different applications together in such a very, very, very complex environment, which is the financial systems environment. So what would you, if you had to give me like an assumption of, because of the technology, so like now they can actually work well together and things are pre-built and they can speak the same language, what would you say is kind of an estimate of the speed to market, I guess, that you get access to now? Like, is it an improvement of 5%, 10% in terms of capabilities, speed to market, how you develop products and everything else?
It's much more, because if you using from existing pre-built connectors, and they have really good variety, like a thread, Marquita, Clearbink. So basically, if you drop in, and that's always the question from the business model. Usually you are not kind of really generic one, because then you are not adding the business value. But if it's drop in, it's basically configuration. It's just tweaks instead of building. Yes, it's white label UI. It can be customized. It can be fully like a change to any flows or look and feel that you need. But if you're starting with the generic one, it's just matter of weeks. And I think here you mentioned really good point, bio build. And I think it's limited with the vision, because it's not bio build. Usually you kind of need the time and money to create the team, which will go and learn the things, and then it will produce the source code and IP that belongs to you. And if you understand that you're actually buying the team, which is then creating the asset for you, you can skip one step. Instead of going and buying the team, what we produce as a fintech core, we license you the source code. So instead of going, pulling the talents from other teams, making sure that they can work together, they can come up with the same protocol, same, approach for the code review, etc., work for 2 years and then produce you the core system, you can actually go to us and have it in no time, because we already done it. We've been in this industry for a decade, and you are basically buying this concentrated experience in a way of licensing the source code.
It's like you're buying it, but it's your own.
Yes.
And so it's almost like you're future-proofing the entire the entire code of the company, which is essential, because you're enabling them to have the infrastructure, the right people as well, which we talked about, key, extremely important. But even if technology moves up very, very quickly, now you can adapt and you can continue to build. That's actually brilliant, right? Giving them access to the code and saying, you know what, guys, it's yours.
Actually, there is a reason for that. And once again, maybe you will like it, because I think right now companies, and especially in the B2B sector, they're thinking that the business value is the product that you compiled and delivered to your client. Actually, it's not, because for companies, and we see, and that's why there is a demand for a source-based approach, it's not a product, an ability to adapt the product for the market, because the product that you deliver today might not be needed tomorrow or in 1 year, because everything is so pacing out that buying the product doesn't make sense, because you need have the system which is able to be configured, agile, and updated to the market needs. And then you're making the next step. Actually, when you're trying to build something which is agile and working for the future, you need the team. So the trick is quite simple. I have the team which was working with me for a decade. They have an experience, and I'm not selling the team. I'm selling the outcome they work, the license for the product, which you can benefit, because you're still on the step 1 thinking about the product. I'm on step 3 thinking about the team which is able to learn and adapt and produce the product. And we're selling you the second point, so which makes total sense.
Yeah, and then I would be on step 5 thinking, okay, what does that look like in 10 years? Can I continue to kind of build on top of it? So I kind of love this, and that brings another topic, right? Like, we're talking about infrastructure a lot. Yeah. One of the infrastructure components that used to be a massive buzzword, now it's fairly annoying to almost everybody. It's the word orchestration, which has been very much just like thrown out there in every single flavor possible. Orchestration this, orchestration that, and to me, like, before we dive into it, the definition of an orchestration layer, it's very important, right? And some people see this as the connectivity. Others see it as, the intelligence you can potentially get. Others see it in a way that's more like, oh, it's an A/B tester that I can just take. How would you describe what an orchestration, in payments is? And more than that, how that ultimately does free you up and give you good flexibility from having just one vendor and what we call vendor lock-in?
I'm thinking about definitions a lot, because if you have a proper way to name the things and explain how it functions, then it gives a good understanding for other people to deal with that. And there is no such thing as orchestration. I would say there is the components or the system which is accountable for getting the business results, and the components which are responsible. Because your card issuer is responsible for issuing the card, your card processor is responsible for processing the card, but your platform is accountable for the business. And when we're talking about the systems like that, that's a decision who will be accountable for the business outcomes. Because you cannot blame card issuer, card processor that you are not successful. But the way how you build the connectors and how you're managing responsible part with your system, and your system is providing you the needed visibility, the control over the business model, the understanding and proper tools for the team to navigate through the business, make proper decisions, and apply the changes when it's needed, then it's accountable. So basically that's orchestration.
So you would almost qualify orchestration as resilience.
Yes.
Really interesting. Actually, I'd never heard that one. I heard redundancy, but not resilience. That's why it's very curious to use that term. What would you say is the biggest benefit? I guess if we describe it as resilience, what is the biggest benefit in your mind from an infrastructure perspective, right? Like really, I want to focus on the infra right now. What is the main benefit of an orchestration layer?
I think it's making sure that you're working when others cannot. It's quite simple. We had the case with the Fuji with the storage of HDD drives on the Asian Typhoon. That's a long story, like short. It was like almost 15 years ago when all the companies, they built their processes with the understanding that you can deliver all the components while you're ordering the HDD. So there is no storages which are kind of used for some kind of collecting the orders and then selling. So there is no redundancy. And the moment when the Pacific Typhoon hit the Asia, all the HDD vendors stopped to deliver the orders and they were out of the business, except one, Fiji, because they had this redundancy in collecting the HDDs and they were selling for a certain period of time. Yes, the pricing went up, but that's kind of gives you an ability to operate when others cannot. And there are more recent examples, like with the outage of AWS in Dubai.
Ouch.
You're building your infrastructure around the cloud because it's working as required, but then the reality hits. And when you are building the system which is resilient, you are asking yourself questions, is it good enough to make sure if it's out, that my business will continue to work? And with the systems like Fintech, where you can build hot plugs with the different regions, so it's not about trusting the vendors and trusting responsible components. It's building the platform which, once again, can take the accountability for your business.
You mentioned something at the end of it, and I'm actually totally agreeing with you, but resilience, there's outages everywhere. But you mentioned different regions.
Yeah.
Infrastructure, right, and how, I guess, companies are being built, and you're probably very close to founders, because obviously, like, a lot of founders are not technical. So as you kind of have been working in different regions with founders in different regions, they probably build differently. They probably don't all use the same kind of mentality of how do I want to build, and so like you help them build that entire stack, right? What would you say are the differences that a founder, in the UK, for example, in London, may want or ultimately look at building his company for and like, versus someone, I don't know, in Dubai or in MENA or in APAC or really anywhere else, like in Jordan, for example?
My answer is that everything starts from internal and communication within the team, because the software is the shadow of the processes of communication. Because the way how you communicate, the way how you define the different components, how they interact, they always follow in the communication inside of the team and company. So usually I would I would suggest to start with the reflecting and understanding how you basically set up the goals, how you explaining how it should work, how do you know your business model and understanding ins and outs. Because sometimes we tend to think that we understand our business model when for real we're not. Like we're just living in short-term period when it gives the results. But when we tend to think on the longer period, there is no sense for what we're doing right now. So I would say that with every region, there is a difference how you are communicating and how you build in the different levels of the communication within the team. But what can be generalized that every company should start from really good understanding how they operate and what they do, and then reflect it to the technology. Technology always serves the business, not vice versa.
I would add maybe just one thing, which is depending on the environment in which a founder is building, there will be major consequences onto how fast do they want to go, the resources they can allocate, the way that they're thinking about technology, and how far ahead are they thinking about the technology that is being brought now. Like a lot of times, especially if we look at the services offered by financial institutions and you look at the big lines, the services haven't really changed. They've been the same. The services are, like, sure, they're evolving a little bit. The UX is changing, but at the end of the day, you have some benefits a little bit more here and there, but they're the same services for the past decades. And so I'm very, very excited in, like when we talked about Silicon Valley and kind of some of the things that I've seen there, and now in New York as well, it's people are now finally starting, because of technology, actually, the blockchain and stuff, finally starting to look at those services and what else can we do? What other services can really be out there changing and adding new capabilities to the financial space? Not a new feature, but new capabilities. So that's maybe another thing is founders are going to be more visionaries if they are in a certain environment. And so technology that they're going to want to have and build is going to be very different because we talk about modularity, but you will need real modularity on that front. I'm sure, you're meant for podcasts. I can obviously see it. I may have done one or two myself. You guys apparently you're also helping others.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give you also the opportunity to talk about this. The Fintech Garden.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit.
Thank you for mentioning it. I think that's a story for giving back to the community because as we discussed, I was fascinated by the community in the United States and Silicon Valley. I've done quite a lot with the community in Kharkiv and mobile engineering. And when I started building fintechs on a scale, I understood there is a vacuum of information because definitely going to every vendor website, it means reading that they solve everything for everyone, which is not true. And
I can do it all, they say.
That's the best way to find out that company doesn't have really
Anything.
vision, what they're doing, what they're trying to solve, and who are their customers. And that's kind of the process what I'm trying to give back the information and kind of the questions that I have in my head when I see the technology, when I see a specific business process, when I hear a news, what actually it means. Because right now we're cluttered with a lot of buzz, with the AI generated content. It's like I'm saying this a lot. It's like everyone became a chef without boiling an egg once in their life. So everyone has an opinion, but they didn't have even an ability to try to deliver something market, to test with their skin, with their money, their time, their technical and business abilities to deliver and check how the reality works. I've been in reality checks in the different ways, with the different projects, with the different setups. I can understand that I don't know a lot of things. That's why I'm asking a lot of questions. And by bringing those questions into the news, into the episodes with the guests, and trying to educate other people in fintech to start asking questions, to start having doubts about the things that taken as a granted, because they might not.
Everyone is an expert now in anything and everything. And today AI doesn't really think for you. It just is better at going out there, taking information, summarizing it, and creating something that you want. But people are going to stop thinking. And I think that's one piece. And so I think the technology of AI will enable more innovation and creativity. At some point, the creators, the people with creativity, will use AI to disrupt and then and create. But everyone else that's, that is not creative, they're gonna ask the AI to think, and today it's not there. And so because it's not there, I think there will be actually, let's see how it balances out, but there might potentially be a decrease in creativity because it's just the AI is going to be thinking and they will be thinking the same things. And the second thing that I wanted to mention regarding everything you just said is I saw an interview of Jensen that says, yeah, I use AI every day, but I don't use AI for it to think for me. I use AI to teach me things, right? And I can think. And I find that as an incredible way of, again, how you were saying it, technology can be used in so many different ways, how you should be leveraging technology. And so I'm the one obviously moderating today, and I wanted to do a quick little exercise with you, like a quick fireside round, where I'm gonna ask you one sentence, like I'm gonna give you a sentence, I'll leave a blank at the end, and I want you to give me one sentence to answer or complete this, the prompt.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
Let's do it. First one, the biggest hidden cost of using a legacy banking core is?
Having a fear to innovate in the business.
The most underrated region for payments innovation right now is?
Global.
Okay. In 5 years, the term payment service provider will mean?
I think the same payment service providers, because we will have the same nature for paying. It's not good to change.
Interesting. I think merchants will have the ability to become PSPs to an extent.
I doubt that.
Okay. Well,
yeah,
no gambling, but we'll see. The one thing founders underestimate when scaling to second markets is?
I think building the trust in the team and providing an ability to take the accountability.
I actually really like this answer. I guess, we're coming up to the end at this point. I'm going to close it out, and I have two major questions for you.
Sure.
Very quickly, right? When you zoom out and you think of DashDevs, do you think of it as a software agency, or are you building a universal operating system? What do you want DashDevs to become?
I'm conscious that you cannot build operating system because it requires building data hardware right now. So there is no generalized solution for operating system, but there is a good chance that we can structure the future banking approach and building the fintechs. Because it's not about building a specific version of the fintech core, is delivering something which is reshaping the thinking while we're building the financial instruments. Because you will be amazed how many tools and current solutions on the market they build without good understanding what accounting is, like P&L, cash flow, balances. Like, it's really simple concept is out of equation from a lot of financial services across the globe. And I think by providing like a guardrails or the framework, which you can start as a boilerplate with a lot of things already thought through for you, which will give an ability to new teams, existing teams, to not reinvent the wheel, but take something that works, which is existing on the market and serves millions of customers, and benefit from it.
Okay. And what do you think success looks like for you guys in the next 5 years?
I think it's just looking back and understanding that you've done the best that was possible.
I think I can relate to that one. Look, thank you so much, Igor, for joining. Today we're actually at MP. That's why we have a voice of MPs behind. This was another episode of Connecting the Dots in Fintech. It was really a pleasure. Like, this is so different from some of the other conversations that I've held. I hope you had a good time.
Thanks.
Thanks to the audience for actually joining and everything. And yeah, I guess let's go network a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for your time.
Great.
And I appreciate all the questions. It was a pleasure for me.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.